Guys, have you ever just had one of those days where you have dogs and a cat, and no matter how much you love them and you try to make them happy, they just grind your gears? Anyway, so this is this is the Magpie Witch podcast. I'm your host Ashley. If you have not met me yet, hello. This is my face. This might be until I get a better camera, which I'm not sure when that's going to happen. This might be the rare occasion that you do see my face. But I wanted to at least have a video this time. I thought it'd be a little bit more entertaining than, maybe watching a picture be slowly drawn on screen or just pictures of my animals being scrolled throughout the video. I thought this would be at least a little bit more entertaining. So if you can bear with the shitty camera quality, then maybe you'll still learn something here. But I do want to go ahead and take care of some housekeeping first. So Thursday, I am going to be doing kind of a book talk or a book review of Corey Hutchison's New World Witchery. Let me show you here. If you can tell what that is. Yes. Good book. Not the perfect book, but definitely a good start. I'll be doing that, and then I will be actually comparing it to his newer book, North American Folk Magic. So this is one that he just came out with, I believe, earlier this year. So I'll be comparing those two for Thursday's video. If you would like to know my plans for Samhain or how to summon things, go ahead and stay tuned and subscribe to the channel to listen to my Halloween podcast on basically my plans and how to summon stuff. So if you'd like to learn how to do that properly, subscribe and check out that later in October. And then if you would like to just support me, a queer, mildly, chronically ill witch who has to chill at home, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and like this video, but also stay tuned because I'm going to be coming out hopefully with some merch very, very soon. So you gotta love those print-on-demand companies. But yeah, I'll be doing that, and I have a couple shirts already in the works. Also, two things. Before my ADHD brain forgets, if you see me scratching my nose a lot, there's Merlin kitten hair floating around in the air. If you have cats, you understand. We just had like the biggest love sesh, so I got cat hair in my nose and it itches. Also, good lord. Also, excuse me. I am not used to being on camera, so if you see me going between up there and then down here, and then up there, and then down here, it's because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go. So you're just going to have to bear with the shitty camera quality and someone who doesn't know how to be on camera. We'll get through this together. So, without further ado, I believe let's go ahead and get to what we are talking about today, which is working with the Fae. So the Fae, oh my gosh, they are very well known, especially like in the Celtic, under the giant Celtic umbrella of stuff. The Fae are huge. But the Fae are not only seen in just like Celtic folklore, they're not just seen, like in Eurocentric sort of religions and cultures and stuff. We see the Fae and little people, I say little people, I mean like the little magical beings. I don't mean anything terrible. Get your mind out of that. We see like these tiny magical beings, be it called Fae or a daemon or demons if you're a Christian. Why are you here if you are? No hate, but still, why? We see all these little tiny entities in all these different religions around the globe, and for the sake of this video, I'm not going to talk about that specifically. I'm going to talk about my perspective because that's what I've researched the most, which is going to be very, very Eurocentric. Excuse me. And it's going to be a huge mix between, I'm just going to warn you, a huge mix between Welsh folklore, Irish folklore, and then just extremely general Celtic folklore. I have dabbled in Norse. I've dabbled, obviously, in other Germanic practices beyond just Norse. But my experiences with the Fae started way before I went down my witchcraft path. So my experiences predate me learning any of those terms, or predate me learning, any of like the official Fae culture stuff or whatever, because I've always seen things. Okay, so what you're going to get out of this video today is I am going to make some cultural references, specifically to like Irish practices and other things connected to that. I am going to make references to those, but a lot of this video is going to be UPG based because that's just where most of my experiences come from. So, anywho, so let's get into who they are and who they're not. So let's start with who they're not. Who are they not? So they are not always those cute little tiny Tinkerbell beings that you see in movies. Oftentimes, Fae really like to show themselves off to humans in ways that actually would frighten humans, or at least disturb humans, because they just really enjoy messing with us. On that note, not every Fae likes to mess with humans. In fact, some of them are very kind, and you guys work together and you make relationships, and it's great, right? But there's also a good chunk of Fae that just are morally ambivalent in human terms, and just like to have fun, right? So they're not always that like innocent little Tinkerbell being, right? So then what are they? So like I said, I'm going to be coming from a background of Irish stuff, okay, and general Celtic stuff. So a lot of the terms that I'm going to use is from that perspective. But it doesn't mean that the information that's interwoven between the terms is not still applicable to outside of the Eurocentric approach to the Fae, right? But for the sake of this video and to keep it simple, we'll keep it in those terms. So not every entity that comes from the other world is a Fae, but every Fae comes from the other world. Let me explain. The other world can be thought of as a realm that is parallel / sort of sitting on top of our current earthly realm. Okay, and the thing that keeps the Fae realm, so maybe I'll say Fae realm instead of other world because that's more encompassing of other cultures. Yeah, we'll just say Fae. We'll say Fae realm, even though that's not. Yeah, sorry. What is keeping the Fae realm separate from the earthly realm here where we are is the veil. And maybe you have heard of the veil, maybe you haven't, but the veil is basically, from my own experience, what I have been told from my entities, it is there to keep humans sane, basically, because there are so many other things that we can't see. And I mean, okay, aside, tangent, science has even, like, oh gosh, I'm blanking on a word. Science has even confirmed this, where our human eyes, our human ears, we can't hear, we can't see everything that's in this plane of reality, okay? But say, for example, if you like turn and go get a cat, for example, they have so many more like skills in seeing things, and they can hear so much better, they can smell so much better. They truly can see through the veil. Cats can. And so, but with us humans, we can't see through the veil. And the veil is there specifically, at least to my understanding, the veil is there for us to keep us sane. Now, some of us were born with either completely missing veil, or were born with some significantly thinner of a veil, right? So we can still, I can see a lot of things. I'm very aware of when another entity is in my house, my RV, whatever you want to call it. I see things out of my periphery. While I'm dreaming, I see all types of shit all the time. And that's just because I happen to be born with the veil being very, very thin for myself. But yeah, so let's get out of me. So who they are, they're basically just these morally, depending on human standards, we'll get there too, morally ambivalent entities that live in a parallel realm and can go in between multiple realms, mostly on ours, because they are, again, very earthly spirits, most of them. If you have ever been in the field of biology, you'll understand that not everything in biology is a rule, and in fact, there is an exception to every quote-unquote rule in biology. The Fae is exactly like biology in this case. There is an exception to everything I'm telling you in this video. It's just insane. The world of the Fae is so much more than what, a 200-page Fae witchcraft book can tell you. Okay? And kind of going back into what they're not, before I finally move on to the next part of this podcast, going back into what they're not, in a lot of Fae videos, you will see kind of two main groups pop up, and it'll be like the Dark Fae or the Night Fae or whatever, and then you'll have like the Blessed Fae or the Light Fae or the Good Fae, right? And then sometimes you'll have like an in-between group where it's just like Fae that don't belong to any group, right? I don't think that's wrong at all. But that also came from very Celtic lines of thought and very specifically Irish contexts. So I don't pay attention to those two sides very often, or like the Fae Queen or whatever, or that you read about in books. I don't pay attention to that as much because that doesn't, to me, it doesn't connect. Because there's so much more than just those two groups. And I don't think it's fair for me to create a podcast and define all of Fae in just those two groups. It's not fair to you guys, to you guys, and it's not fair to the Fae or the Fairfolk. Because to try to box them in or pigeonhole them into one of two sides is insane. So, no, we're not doing that. In this video, at least. Yeah, sorry about that tangent. So, before I want to go into why we would want to work with them, I do want to bring up a word of caution. Because they are morally ambivalent, and okay, let me explain that real fast. Us as humans, we know what is right and wrong, okay? And depending on the society that you grew up in, your definitions of right and wrong might be slightly different than my definitions of right and wrong. But we still share that kind of human, you're a human, I'm a human, we're not going to harm each other. Or, we still share like standards in our morals. Standard safety things, standard expectations for food, standard expectations for how we're going to be treated, how we treat others, stuff like that, right? The Fae, they play by their own rules, and that is because they are not human. Obviously. But the Fae don't follow our morals at all. They follow absolute truth. They follow what their desires take them, wherever that is. And they follow basically what is right for the earth and what is right for Mother Nature only. Now, that brings up a good example. Just like how the Fae are morally ambivalent, Mother Nature is also morally ambivalent. Mother Nature does not care if the destruction she causes. She just does it because it has to be done, because that is what it is. It just is, right? Just like with Mother Nature, it just is. Fae, it just is. They're morally ambivalent. Mother Nature is either creating a hurricane one day or has a beautiful, nice spring 70 degree day, a week later, right? There's both destruction, there's both creation, and that's just Mother Nature. Same with the Fae. There'll be moments of creation and there'll be moments of pure destruction, but do know that there's always a reason. There's always some form of justification, be it something we would understand or not. There's always a justification for their actions. Then another part of my word of caution here then is, how I mentioned that they follow absolute truth? Yup. So, they follow absolute truth, but that does not mean that they won't be tricky if they're feeling like being a little shit to you. So, what does that mean for you? Well, one of the reasons why we might want to work with the Fae, and I don't recommend this part to anybody, but if you just want to go into a crash course of spell making and making, effective spells, then work with the Fae. And I say that because when you're working on making a spell, you have to be so careful with how you word things. You have to be very specific with what you want. You cannot leave too many loopholes or too much room for things to go awry when you're writing a spell, okay? Now, when you are working with the Fae on creating a spell, it's that, but on steroids, all right? You need to be specific. You need to have everything written out to a T as to what you want. You cannot leave room for any extra potential chaos to come in that you don't want. Okay, so working with the Fae will absolutely make you a good spell writer because you need to make sure your wording is perfect. Okay, on the other end of that though, anything that you say to the Fae, anything that you promise to the Fae, anything, right? Any sort of communication that you have at all with the Fae must be absolute truth, because then they get salty at you. The biggest reason why that Fae hate humans, or hate a lot of humans, not all. In fact, with witches, it's quite the opposite. The reason why a lot of Fae hate humans is because we like to lie. We like to lie. We kill things that is in nature. We destroy things. And we are very selfish. So when we say things like thank you, a lot of times we don't truly understand what that thank you actually means, or what the gravity that saying thank you to somebody means, right? So, when you're working with the Fae, you need to make sure that one, whatever you're saying is truth, and that if you thank them, which actually I would really put a lot of thought into why you're saying thank you. I'll get to that in a second. But you just need to make sure that you are absolutely prepared with whatever you're going to say to them. You are absolutely prepared with whatever you're going to request from them. That truthfulness also comes into making deals with them, right? So if you strike up a bargain for whatever reason, whatever outcome to a spell, or maybe you're manifesting something, or maybe you need something, and you make a deal, part of that absolute truth part is that you will fulfill your half of the contract to the T. And if you don't, then you lose complete trust of the Fae, especially the specific individual that you're working with. And now they have complete freedom to do with whatever they please because you broke that contract. On top of that, you have to understand that the rules of the Fae, from my understanding, are separate from the rules of this particular realm. And what I mean is, if you made a deal with the Fae, and you have a whole other spirit team that's not made of Fae, that's watched you made that deal, okay? And say you did not fulfill your half the bargain. Your entities, like say you have deities or whatever, say I made a deal with the Fae and my god Hades is watching it and is saying, keep up your side of the bargain. Because if you don't keep up your side of the bargain, that Fae has every right to do with what it pleases, because it resides in a completely different jurisdiction, so to speak, right? Like say you lied on your contract, okay, and you go crying to your gods. In my case, I would go cry to Hades in this situation and be like, Hades, help me, they're torturing me. He would be like, not my department, bitch. Not my department, not my problem, because it's out of my jurisdiction. You decided to make that contract, you didn't uphold the contract, and now you got to pay whatever consequences that they decide, And that's, yeah. that was a tangent that I went on, but yeah. So, I don't think I've painted a pretty picture as to why you would even want to work with them then. And that makes me so sad because I love working with the Fae. I work, it's a daily thing now. It's a relationship that I've built up. So, okay, that brings up a good point. So, yeah, so you have to be extremely honest, right? You have to you watch your wording, you be very specific. They're morally ambivalent. Why the hell would you even want to work with these guys? Well, they have skills that far surpass any witch on this plane of existence. Okay, they are amazing communicators. If you build a relationship with a Fae, that is a bonded relationship that is going to be with you for the rest of your days, on this realm, at least. The magic is better. Things get done faster. You always have something on the other side to kind of watch your back, if that's the relationship that you decided to build with that entity. They can come with you on dream journeys. They can come with you on journeys while you're meditating. A whole bunch of stuff. They can help you. They can help provide protection. They can. Oh my God! The whole idea about working with the Fae and it being terrifying is okay, it is at first, but once you get past it, once y'all start to build a bit of trust, it's nothing. It really isn't. It's not as big of a deal as what you think it is. But yeah, so it just builds up your witchcraft. But something that I will mention now, and I am going to mention when I start bringing up the books later in this episode, because I did gather a couple of my Fae-craft books to share with y'all. Something to remember though, the Fae are still beings, okay? They are not tools. And they are entities that should be respected, okay? And if you want to work with them, you work with them. You do not use them. And I will get into why I'm saying this right now, as I have a very big author and his book is chilling on my my table right now. Goes by the name of Storm what? What's your stupid name? Storm Fairy Wolf. Yeah, you probably heard of him if you work with the Fae. I don't agree with his book whatsoever. Books, I should say. Anyway, so we'll get into that in just a minute, not to get too out of the way. Yeah, so what if you don't want to work with them? Before I go into this video, before I waste any more of your time, we're 23 minutes in. What if you don't want to work with the Fae? What if you saw a Fae or another entity that you thought was a Fae and you were like, you know what, that's just really scary. Or, maybe you angered some or whatever. Maybe you just don't want Fae in your house. What are some protections that you could put in place? Well, there is always the iron, any sort of iron that you could have around. Do be careful with that though, because there are, on the very flip side of, some folklore will say that iron is absolutely horrible for Fae. There's some folklore that says that iron will just piss them off and make it worse on you. There's some of them that say that iron actually makes them stronger because it's, an earthly metal. Take that with a grain of salt. If you haven't watched my First Thoughts podcast, please go watch my First Thoughts podcast. I'll actually link it at the end of this video just so you can go watch it, because working with the Fae, so much of it is following your intuition. Yeah, you will see things. You might get gifts. You might see things move around in your house or whatever. But a lot of your relationship and what you're doing when you're working with the Fae is just intuition and trusting those first thoughts. So if you haven't watched that podcast, please go check that out. And it explains building your intuition and all that fun stuff. Actually, that was my first episode. So yeah, go check out my first podcast episode. Any hoozle. So, protections against these guys. You have iron. Try that at your own risk. Otherwise, I personally, if I don't want to have Fae in my house, I will do basically any protection work that I would do with any other entity. Okay? So maybe that is smoke cleansing my RV. Maybe I'm taking my witch's bell out and I'm, because lower, when I say a lower entity, I mean an entity that carries energy that is a lot heavier. So the way that humans would understand that heavier energy would be more of like negative energy. So very angry, very heavy, almost feels like tar kind of energy, right? That, some Fae do carry that because that's just the nature of them. And in some folklore, you might put them on the bad side of the Fae, right? You might happen to do that. But yeah, shit, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, so I would just like any other spirit protections, I'm sorry, my dog is being a dork. I would put out runes, like protection runes. I would smoke cleanse. I have different like obsidian rocks. I would put that out. Basically, my intention, I hope you can you can maybe see this kind of being woven through what I'm saying, but the intention is there. The intention is I do not want you in my house. I do not want you in here, and you need to be stern, okay? So using all of those tools and materials like I just said or not, if you happen to use those, that's great. If you don't, that's honestly, you can get by with what I'm about to say. But it might be a little bit harder. So take this with a grain of salt. But if you have Fae in your house and you don't want to deal with them, you're just going to have to be incredibly confident and stern in your intention of not wanting them in there. Fae smell fear, and they smell weakness. And if they are an entity, if they are a Fae that is not necessarily fond of humans or enjoys playing with humans, because a lot of those exist. Really? No. Sorry. Because a lot of those exist. You just... Fuck's sakes, where was I going with this? Really? Sorry. I get distracted by one of my pets and then I completely forgot what I was going on. Oh dear. Yeah, the intention is there. The intention is there. You are creating this wall because you are trying to block them out of your space. So just any other cleansing thing would work. If you do use tools, that's great. If you don't use tools, that's also fine. But like I said, it is going to be a lot harder. They do smell weakness. They do smell fear. If it's a Fae that doesn't necessarily like humans and they can tell that you are not as confident when you're telling them to go away, then they will not go away. They will not go away. So that's why I like to say use tools. Use things that they usually find disgusting or repulsive. And that helps. Again, folklorically, iron used to be something repulsive. Other things are repulsive. You just don't want to anger them. That's the other thing, too. You just want a peaceful, if you don't want them around, you really just want a peaceful, please leave me alone. A peaceful, please go away. Maybe give them a goodbye present, honestly. You just don't want to piss them off. Even if they're the good kind that likes humans and shit. You just don't want to piss them off. So if you want them out of your house, just don't be very confident. If you want to make sure you absolutely don't piss them off so then they, don't torture you later, maybe give them a parting gift, and we'll get into offerings here in a minute, but maybe give them a parting gift. Like, here's a shot glass of honey and some barley. I wish you well. I don't wish you harm, but please leave my space. I don't want you in my space. Some entities absolutely will not leave you alone, and if that's the case, then crap, yeah, you probably need some heavier duty protections, and that's for another video. But yeah, so let's see here. I did write down some stuff for y'all. Ooh, yes. Okay. let's do offerings next. So, what could be seen as a good offering for a fae? Like I said, there's a lot of fae in different kinds of cultures. Not all of them are referred to as fae. You know, they might be seen as elves or daemons or whatever. But if you're wanting to make an offering, the things that I'm about to say are generally going to get you where you need to go. Honestly, no matter what fae you're trying to offer to. Now, granted, you know, once you build that relationship, it might become more clear what they specifically want, and it might not be what actually is something I'm mentioning. But what I am going to mention is, in general practice, is good for offerings. So, sweet things. Fae love sweet things. I think that's kind of enough said, really. I think that's a given. Fae love candy. They really like homemade stuff. So, like, if you just made a pastry of some sort, maybe you just made lemon bars like I did this past weekend, don't take a serving for yourself first or for whoever's in your family first. Take a serving out, place it on a plate or whatever, and put it to the side for the fae with that intention. Maybe say it out loud, like, hey, I'm putting this aside if there's any sort of, you know, fair folk or around that's interested, maybe, or the unseen, right? Yeah. Just set it off to a side, but you want to make sure you do it first, as that is a sign of respect. And I'm not the only one that's going to say that. Another good offering besides sweet things, grains. Grains, anything that is kind of a symbol of a good harvest. You know, abundance, stuff like that. They like to see that you are giving some form of sacrifice, sometimes. And unlike what a lot of people think of when they hear sacrifice and witchcraft in the same sentence, it's not always bloody, right? It's not always dead things. In this case, it's literally I'm giving you a cup of milk. Or I'm offering a cup of water. Or I'm offering, in this case, grains, right? So I have barley, I have oatmeal that's like all organic and stuff in there that's in my pantry. And if I have the desire to, you know, reach out to a fae that maybe I haven't reached out before, I'll give them some barley. I'll dump out a little cup of barley and, you know, whatever other herbs and crystals that I decide to kind of put together into that little offering bowl at the moment. And that has always served really well. It's a very good general offering to give is grains. So, and milk. Milk definitely, especially in Celtic lore, Irish folklore specifically, because cows were seen as a status symbol. The more cows you had, the more well off you were, right? Because you had all that meat, you had all that milk. You could take care of the cow, so you had the resources to take care of the cow. You had that wealth to do so. So milk is a huge, wonderful offering that signifies abundance and prosperity. Let's see here, shiny stuff, like pretty rocks, anything from nature, so like honey, feathers, elderberries. I at one point knew why they loved elderberries, and now I can't freaking remember why. I'm so sorry. If somebody hears this and gives me a comment as to why they love elderberries and refresh my memory, but yes, they like elderberries. Honey, obviously, honey is... Ooh, tangent. Honey is one of those spell ingredients or offerings that probably there is not a single entity out there that would hate. There is not a single spell, especially manifestation spells, that would not benefit from honey, because honey is pure creation energy. Okay, it's sugar. It feeds the bees. The bees are a huge part of keeping this world going around. Honey is that manifestation of pure creation energy. Okay, it's made from the pollen and a bunch of other stuff from the bee, but the big part of that is that pollen, right? That's coming from those plants. So then it can breed, so then it can make more flowers, right? That's pure creation energy. If I make a video on chakras, which I'm not a chakra master or whatever the fuck you want to call them, in the slightest, but I do have at least a mild understanding of chakras, and Like, honey is akin to your sacral chakra, basically. I'll leave that at that before I get way off track. But yes, so anything from nature. Shiny stuff. I have some rocks. Like, I have some rainbow howlite. I think that's what there is called. And it's rainbow because it was heat treated. But it's really pretty. It's bright white. It's got some obviously rainbowy sheen all over it. Excuse me. That's really cool. I have a little shot glass actually that's full of like little trinkets that I have picked up throughout my days on this planet. So one of them is actually a really old ring from my granny. It still has the diamond on it. It is gold. So it's both shiny and has a huge significance to me. So for that to be on the altar where my fae, my main area for my fae altar, that's a big deal, right? That's a huge show of trust because I am giving you this artifact that is from someone who means so much to me. And it also holds so much inherent monetary value as well. And I'm putting it there without any intention of taking it off or selling it or whatever. Right? So that's a huge vote of trust. Let's see here. Yes. Oh, yes, jewelry. Besides that ring, coins, and the coins don't necessarily have to be perfect, but if you found like a really cool quarter or a really cool little coin that is just really intricate and you found interesting, they probably would also find that interesting. Alcohol. That's another one. So if you have alcohol in the house, and for YouTube's sake and for my own legal sake, if you're under 21, don't do it. I'll leave it there. Alcohol. Also on the flip side, and I learned that I can say weed. Here. If you ever watch the Brittany Broski podcast, shout out by the way, that woman always talks about pot. So yes, weed also makes a wonderful offering, especially with the more jovial fae, the fae that just really love to have a good fucking time. Yeah, if you have some bud left over, you just set that bud behind with no intention of smoking it. Okay, the key is that it is now theirs. All right, you're not ingesting it. So, yeah, if you have some bud, put some bud on their altar. That's an amazing offering. Devotions to nature. I feel like this is something that sometimes is touched on as an offering, but not all the time. Devotions to nature. So, and I don't mean just nature. I mean like to your animals, to maybe you have a spider in your house that you don't kill. Maybe you have plants that you take care of. Anything of the natural world, and you taking care of them, and you doing it with the intention of both, as two parts, right? The intention of both making sure that whatever you're taking care of is happy and healthy, but also with the intention of, hey, I'm doing this in service to you, to the fae, to the fair folk, or the fae family, right? I'm doing this in service to y'all. That also makes a good offering, right? Just moving throughout the world with compassion builds wonderful relationships with any other worldly entity, especially the fae, because you're not acting in the way that most humans do. You are being extremely aware of the small lives around you. So like, I try my best not to kill spiders or kill other bugs that are in my house unless it's just absolutely has to, like a cockroach or something, like a pest. But otherwise, I try to be very aware, and I try to save the little lives that I can. So maybe put the spider outside, or in the case of Margaret right now, I have a giant house spider, Margaret, that's chilling in the corner right in next to this light right up here. She has a huge web that she has made, and she kills, or else she catches the flies that sometimes, come into my RV. And last night she actually had quite the feast of a fly, so that was awesome. But yeah, so I for example, I have not killed her. I've actually let her completely flourish, and that is her corner of my ceiling now. Seriously, that is like, she had, if I could show, I'd probably take a picture of it and post it after this podcast. But yeah, she has a whole house okay, that she has built herself. And yeah, it's insane. But yeah, so like that can be seen as an offering. Just making your pets really happy, you know, making sure that they're getting, you know, the extra love and goodness that you can possibly offer them. That can also be seen as a devotional act. Going out and picking up trash around your neighborhood. That is also seen as a devotional act, right? Because you're taking care of nature. If you leave out, say, offerings for the birds, so maybe you leave out some bird seed, or maybe you try to clean up, you know, around where you know that they inhabit, right? So like pick up any nasty trash or whatever, or just leave like some fresh water. That can also be seen as a devotional act. So offerings don't always have to be tangible objects. They can also be actions that we take to make the world a better place, right? These next couple offerings are going to be highly dependent upon the situation. And that is, and I almost don't even want to say it for this video. Excuse me. Cool. Depending on the situation, and if you are a minor, don't do this. But this first one, depending on the situation, blood. Blood makes a really good offering. And blood is not as serious as, or serious in the same fashion that a lot of witches look at it. And what I mean by that is blood is not going to seal your fate or sell your soul, or you're not going to like have thousands of years of bad luck or on your family or whatever. No. Blood is literally the life that runs through our being. A drop of blood connects us back to our individual selves because of our DNA. Therefore, all blood is a direct tag lock back to your soul, and a direct way to energize either an offering or a working. There's nothing inherently evil about it. It all has to do with what your intention is. Okay? And you don't even have to hurt yourself to get blood, right? If you are a uterus having person who has periods, you have blood once a month, or however often you have your periods. They're in the bedroom right now because aside context, my dogs are in the bedroom right now and they're super salty because they want to cause havoc out here and I don't want noise. So if you hear them whining, I'm sorry. They have the AC on, they have the windows open, the blinds, they can see out, they have toys. Sorry. I just don't want people in here thinking that I like don't love my dogs or my cat or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, y'all are weird. I love them to bits. But back to the fae. Blood. Yeah. So if you're a uterus having person who has periods, you at least have a supply of blood from that. If you don't, that's okay. I tend to use a lancet. Like, you know, the little lancets that diabetics you can buy from like Walgreens or whatever. And you just refill it with like the little tips. That's what I use. And it's just a quick little, you know, prick on the finger, and then I just right into my little spell, a couple drops, that's all you need. Yeah, and I'll do that sometimes. I definitely don't do that for every spell or every offering, but if I feel like it calls for it, I definitely will, and I won't hesitate. Because yeah, it is just charging it with my pure essence of myself. That literally is. Think of it like that. Your blood is charging, you are charging the spell with the pure essence of yourself by using blood. And you can use other things too. You can use like, you know, fluids. After having sex, you can use like sexual fluids, like for sex spells and stuff. It doesn't always have to be blood, but for the context of the offerings, blood works. And honestly, the fae love sex, so yeah, sexual fluids would work as well. Can you stop? No. Anyway, we gotta wrap this up pretty soon because they're getting impatient. So, yes, blood, fluids, then written contracts. Just like with any other human sort of thing, right? Human interaction that we might have here where we want to get something done and we will write out a contract on paper here in this earthly realm. Just like with the Fae, or just like with us, we would write out a literal contract on paper with this Fae or on any other surface with this Fae. Now, obviously, they're not going to be able to just manifest here and sign it themselves. So that's where your intuition comes into play, and you hope that they heard it, which they most definitely probably did, because contracts are not taken lightly at all. So yeah, if you go out and you write a contract for a Fae and you post it on your wall, for example, in your bedroom or whatever, as a reminder that it's there, they will be aware that it's there, and they will keep you to fulfilling your half of that contract. Just be aware. And they will find ways to make sure you fulfill that contract. No. Hush. You'll be out soon, I promise. I promise. Yes. So, how do they communicate? I feel like we could have probably gotten into this a little bit earlier, but that's alright. How do the Fae communicate? So, there's obviously telepathically, and like I said, if you haven't watched my First Thoughts video, go watch that. That was my very first podcast episode. Towards the about last, I would say 25-30 minutes of that episode, I talk about building up your intuition. That's incredibly important because a lot of times Fae are going to discuss things with you telepathically, including in dreams. They'll also talk to you through gifts, right? So, for example, like if you're looking for a confirmation on something and you say, give me a feather, right? And I've discussed this too in my First Thoughts, but like ways of communicating with entities. Communicating with the Fae is no different. You know, if you are wanting tangible signs, you ask for tangible signs. If you want to discuss something in dreams, you ask to discuss something in dreams. The only reason why it's any different is because if you are requesting something, be very careful how you request it. Be very careful how you request anything from the Fae, because it can be construed as a potential favor. And that is where you get into like weird contract situations where what you thought was just a passing lighthearted favor was, well, you just made an agreement and now you owe them something. Yeah, don't do that. So just, again, be very careful how you word things. Be very careful how you word things. But yeah, through gifts, so like things that you find that would not normally be there, right? Or symbols that you said to put in your pathway while you're out and about in this world, right? And then they happen to show up. So like gifts. That's what I mean by gifts. Directly. They will talk to you directly. Like it, mentioned maybe through dreams, or maybe you did a spell that would momentarily thin the veil, or maybe you were like me and you don't really have a veil, at least all the time. So they just show up randomly in person, in front of your face, or peripheral, or that they're there, right? And then they communicate you through, directly. Maybe you, for example, maybe they're talking to you telepathically, but you see them standing in the room with you, and you just hear their thoughts. You hear them talking to you in your brain, and you see them standing there. That's kind of what I mean directly. I have only one time had my name said out loud before. So when I say directly, I don't generally mean like as if I'm speaking to you right now, that they would speak to you this way. I'm not saying that's impossible, because again, I've heard my name be said out loud before. And that was terrifying and honestly gives me chills just thinking about it right now. But yes, it's not impossible. But when I say directly, I still mean telepathically, but then they're just in the room and you can see them. Through actions happening around you, think about like inconveniences, or maybe the opposite, maybe just like really lucky things. And you'll notice the things happening around you and that being a mode of communication from the Fae, especially if you have either just fulfilled a contract or if you haven't fulfilled one and you've been lacking. And if you've been lacking, you'll start to notice all these little tiny minor inconveniences popping up around you, like little bits of bad luck. And depending on the severity of the contract, or depending on how long you've ignored your half of the contract, those inconveniences and those little bits of bad luck will grow. And they will grow to really big. And then you'll have to deal with that. But I'm not saying that every bad event that's happened in your life is because entities are just shitting on you all the time. Don't take that, no. But if you have consciously made a deal and then all of a sudden things are going to shit, or on the flip side, you have fulfilled your side and all of a sudden things are looking really great, that might be them communicating with you. That's all I'm saying. Oh, yes. Okay. Before I get into how to officially start your relationship, if you want to, with a Fae being, I want to go ahead and talk about some books. So I only pulled, with all of the work that I have done with Fae, I only have 3 official books on the Fae that I've gotten within the past 3-ish years. Again, most of my experiences with the Fae are from my growing up and seeing stuff. So anyway, let's go through some books. So I want to show you probably the middle of the road one first, and that's going to be Fairycraft. That's going to be this book. This book, I know it's flipped, and I'm so sorry if you can't make out what that says. I apologize. But Fairycraft by Morgan Daimler? Daimler. Daimler. Anyway, this is an amazing book if you are just starting out, but you've already gotten your feet kind of in the water a little bit. You know the direction that you're wanting to go as far as trying to work with the Fae, but you need a guide that still teaches you the very basics. This is going to teach you the very basics. Now, it does cover, the 2 main courts, like I mentioned. You have the good Fae, the light Fae, and then you have the dark Fae, which is usually called, the Unseelie or whatever. It does cover that. Again, take that as that is only under Irish folklore. There are hints of other factions from other folklores. But again, that is a very Eurocentric point of view. So, and not Fae, are not only from Europe. Some people will argue with me on that because Fae technically, they did originate it folklorically from the hills in the British Isles. And you would find, their mounds, and you'd go into the other world or the underworld through those mounds, and you would find the Fae. Yes, but modern terms, and with the modern understanding that there are these tiny entities seen throughout all cultures. That was a huge tangent. My whole point is, take that part with a grain of salt. Realize that there are Fae that exist outside of the Irish folkloric legends. Okay? Okay. But this book is very much in that context. So just keep that in mind. Ma'am, you're gonna come out soon, I promise. I promise. We're almost done here. I promise. But yeah, this book kind of gives you, a background, a little bit on the fairy folk, the Irish fairy folk specifically. It teaches you some stuff on house spirits, on, specific holidays, Wheel of the Year stuff. It's very... Freya. I'm going to have to cut that out. It's a very both in-depth but superficial book at the same time. This is an amazing book if you are just starting out and you have... One, you want to check out the Fae, but also you're kind of new at witchcraft at the same time. That's what this book is amazing at. I hope I went into enough depth. Sorry, my Freya Ironically, she's named Freya. Yeah, she's still in the bedroom and she's salty about it. Anyway, this next book, I would say, it's probably one of my more favorite fairy books that I own. Granted, I only own a few, but I do own a lot of witchcraft books. I would say it's one of my most favorite witchcraft books. It's not even a witchcraft book. It's The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies by Robert Crook. And here's the cover. I think it cost me less than $10 on Amazon. And it is a group of essays that were originally written in 1893 by Robert Kirk, who was a Scotch-Irish, I want to say pastor, some sort of religious leader. But he definitely was not pagan, and he definitely was not practicing or working with the Fae actively, which is why I love this book so much, and which is why I love his essays so much, because he's looking at it from an outside perspective. I can't speak. He's looking into it from an outside perspective. So all the stories and firsthand accounts that he gathered from people he interviewed and included their accounts in this book are through the eyes of somebody who has never understood this realm before. So you get like a true impression, is what I'm saying. You get like almost a true account, right? It's much more true, to me at least, because this person who wrote this and who interviewed all these people, they weren't biased towards it, at least. In fact, they were probably vehemently against it. And because, you know, he had a more Christian background, Robert Crook did, he probably in fact thought that most of these were demons, or what they said at the, you know, way back then, daemons, right? So evil things. So I really like this book. It has a lot of different accounts of people from the 1800s talking about Fae. I think it'd be a really good starter book if you're someone who's like, does that stuff even exist? Or maybe you don't want to get into working with the Fae, but you still want to read some cool, scary stories. This book is really cool. I love this book, and I've read this a gajillion times. Word of caution, it is written in really, really, really old, broken up English / Scotch / whatever the other shit dialect he wrote in. So there is a glossary of terms in the background that they try to help you kind of translate some of the stuff that he's saying. You know, an exposition of difficult words. They do break it down as much as possible, but you might still have to take some notes while you're reading this book. I know I certainly did, just because there's just some ways that he says things that's from such a time ago that I need help understanding. So some of you might find that as well. But yes, Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies by Robert Crook. Highly recommend this book. Highly recommend this book. Lastly, before I get into relationship stuff with my dog, if Freya allows me to do so, is before we get into building relationships, I do want to talk about this book. Fairy Witchcraft by Storm Fairy Wolf. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I first bought this book because the cover looked really cool. And I fell for it probably just like a lot of y'all did, if you have bought this book. The cover is so cool. Whoever did the artwork, spot on, okay? The rituals and the information that he includes in here is pretty good, okay? It's pretty good. It's not bad. And he does go into depth in the other books that he has written as well, more into depth of what he has covered here, okay? What I don't enjoy, though, is something that I've noticed, not in just this reading, but in this book that he's written, but the way he approaches the Fae and the way he writes about them very much comes across as we're using them as tools, and we're not acknowledging them as completely separate entities with their own vast existences and lives, right? Further, especially in this book, he also claims that, and now I know this is not going to be a book review, a full in-depth book review, but I just wanted to give you a word of caution before you go out and buy some books. And if you happen to see this one and it intrigued you, I just want you to know some things. Not only does he working with Fae like their tools, he also includes a ritual, and granted, maybe this isn't what he meant by it. But the way he worded it was there's a ritual to make yourself a Fae by some agreement with the Fae Queen, and through this weird meditation that he takes you that involves a horse and a river of tears and blood and this whole bunch of weird crap. But he takes you through this ritual to become one of the Fae. And he always mentions in his book his coven. I think it's Blue Rose or something like that. I tried not to care, and that's why I forgot the name. He mentions his coven all the time. He mentions how we're using them as tools, and then he talks about how you're going to convert yourself into a Fae. And granted, I might have completely misunderstood what he meant by that, but honestly, I just found the whole book and his cockiness insulting. And what do you mean you're going to turn yourself into a Fae? It's not how that works. Anyway, yeah, so that's my take on the book. He has good information in it, just you're going to have to look beyond the weird cockiness. Yeah. Excuse me. You're going to have to look beyond the weird cockiness, but yeah, I would probably rate this maybe like a 6 out of 10, probably a 5 out of 10, just because of the sheer cockiness that he has throughout the entire book. Like, he just owns the fucking Fae. It's like, okay. No, you don't, but alright. So that was a tangent. Whew, that sneeze got me. That cat hair. It's a lot. Anywho, so yeah, Fairycraft, if you are just starting out both with the Fae and also kind of with witchcraft in general, this is a really good kind of middle of the road book. I give this an 8 out of 10. Oh, excuse me. The Commonwealth by Robert Kirk, I would say, I don't care who you are, just buy the book. Read it. It's amazing. And honestly, it's a really, really, really short read. I don't think it's even 100 pages. No, it's not. Like, glossary and all, it's like 91 pages. So, super quick read, super worth it. That's it. And then Fairy Witchcraft by Storm Fairy Wolf. I would say if it was the last Fairy Witchcraft book that was in the store, and you absolutely just had to have a book on Fairy Witchcraft, sure. But there's nothing in here that you can't find elsewhere and written in a better way. So, yes. I would say, yeah, just don't waste your time. And also, it's $23. At least back when I bought it in Washington. It is $23 for this book, so get something better. Anywho, give me 1 second. I need to wipe my nose. I'll cut this out. So, how to wipe my nose. Okay. So we went over some books. Yes. So how do you officially start your relationship with the Fae? That is entirely up to you. The way that I started my relationship with the Fae was really, really organic because I just kind of I've always been around the Fae since I was a child. I've always seen stuff since I was a child, so it just organically was there. That said, I did have more of an official moment of coming out or whatever and trying to connect with them much more officially when I started my witchcraft practice. And the way I did that was literally, I verbally said as I was carrying my little offering, right? I would have an offering of either, like I mentioned earlier, barley or milk or honey. Sometimes I would pick flowers from, at the time, my mom's garden, and I would make a little offering bowl for them. And I would do this probably like every couple days. Honestly, I would do this pretty much as soon as those flowers started to look sad in that offering bowl. I would change it immediately. I would change it, and then I would verbally be like, here's your offering. I wish you peace. You know, come if you desire. If you don't want to, that's fine. Basically, it's just like talking it out like you're trying to coax like a scared animal out of under your bed, right? It's okay, sweetie. You can come out. I bring you snacks and calm vibes and maybe a comfort blanket. Yeah. Maybe not as condescending as that or childlike as that, but I mean, basically, right? You're setting out your offering. You're saying, hey, if anyone is interested in what I have to share, they can come and chill. And then over time, I just noticed things starting to kind of change, or I started to actually see things chilling by my altar at night. I think the first confirmation that I had that they were actually paying attention and enjoying the offerings that I had been putting out for like a few weeks at that time was I did see a very small little figure flying around my altar at that moment, around the offering bowl. And it's not like they're actually like taking the actual offering, like the physical offering. I believe it's called pith. At least in the readings that I have gone through, they call that energetic bit to the food that you're offering or to whatever you're offering the pith. Pith, I believe. And it's just the essence or the intention behind the offering that they are taking, that they are enjoying, right? Your energetic thumbprint, basically, that you left behind on your offering. That's what they're enjoying. So yeah, so leaving out offerings, yes, consistency is key. I also like to cleanse with intention, and I even do this today because I like to invite good entities in. I like having a busy RV. I like having a space that I know is pretty much just like one big train station for entities. On this side I have a huge altar. Right above, chilling on my slide out banister thing, I have a little portal that I made, that I wood burnt. And then on this side, I have my staff with my little goat head. Like, I have things everywhere, right? I like having a very open environment. Not everyone does, and that's understandable because things get weird sometimes. You know, I have drawers that will open randomly. I have lights that will flicker all the time. I have stuff that will disappear sometimes. My cat will randomly start playing with something or someone that's not there. Like, it's a thing, but I enjoy it, right? And that is the type of relationship that I chose to build with the fae that decided to stay here. The fair folk that decided to stay here. Yeah, that's just what I do. I have a fae mentor that I work with. I don't know his name. And aside on that, if a fae tells you its name, don't use that lightly because names have a lot of power. The fae that I do work with right now, I don't know his name. I do know what he looks like, and we have conversed and worked together for years, actually. So yeah, that's cleansing with intention, going back to that. Any other way that you would cleanse, but then just maybe add an extra spell ingredient like honey or, something that they specifically have shown to enjoy and incorporate that into your cleansing ritual, right? Okay, we've cleansed, now here's an offering, or follow up with an offering, or just cleansing with the intention of only letting in those entities that, that you want, right? Only letting in the Fae that are going to support you, or only letting in the Fae that want to work with you and are kind of humans, or whatever. Just set your intention. Last thing that I did was I have drawn out the fairy star. It's just a 6-pointed star. I have drawn that out in ashes on one of my tables that I have my plants on. And so I just have the 6-pointed fairy star chilling. It's kind of like a symbol or a call or a beacon, hey, you can chill here. We're happy to have ya. Act like this is a way station in, sort of a way. Yeah, that's what I have. So between constant and consistent offerings, having this symbology that historically has supported them, so like I said, drawing the fairy star somewhere, cleansing with the intention of inviting back certain fae or certain morally aligned fae, just being consistent, building a relationship, knowing it doesn't always have to be some giant ornate offering. It could literally be you made extra coffee that morning, and so you just put out that mug of coffee on the counter and you say, here you go. Any fae entity that's here that wants to chill with me while I have my morning coffee, I have an extra cup for you. It's basically like building a relationship with like a person, right? Be kind, be completely honest, don't hide things. Make sure they feel like they're loved and taken care of. And that is how you're going to build a relationship with the Fae. Yeah, it's just like anyone else. So, what did we talk about? Let's see here. Let's go ahead and review because we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But, so, who are they? Otherworldly entities that sometimes like to mess with humans. But they're very earthly. They're very grounded in earth. They're very earthly spirits, okay? It doesn't mean that they're necessarily they're on this plane of existence. They're on an existence that is parallel to this existence. If you want to learn more, look up the Otherworld. Otherworld. It is a Irish folklore thing. That is where it came from. The Otherworld. Look that up. Anyway, yeah. What they are not. They are not always some cutesy little tiny fairy thing that you might see from Peter Pan. They're not always like Tinkerbell. In fact, sometimes they look like giant scary monsters and they just chill in the corner of your room because they think that's fun. They like messing with humans. That's the big takeaway. They like messing with humans even if they are in general kind and friendly to humans. They still like to have fun with you. Anywho, why would we want to work with them? They strengthen our witchcraft. They strengthen our ability of writing spells, especially because you have to be perfect with your wording. You cannot make sure there are any loopholes. You cannot make sure there's any way that there'd be something construed as a lie. Like, your spell has to be perfect if you're working with a fae. Okay? The writing, spot on. Okay. And they can also help you. They can help you, by the way. So, another reason why we would want to work with them is because they make amazing mentors. Amazing mentors, amazing spiritual guides, amazing protectors, especially when you're doing a soul journey on the other side. Oh my god. No, they're great. But, again, to remind you all, as a word of caution, not every one of them is going to be forthcoming with you. Not everyone is going to like to work with you. Just like just like here on this plane of existence, not every human likes you. And honesty is key. Honesty is key, and making sure you understand the gravity of saying thank you. Also, make sure that you don't say thank you constantly, because then you're just owing them things every time you say thank you. That's basically, if you say thank you, you just accepted that they gave you something, even if they didn't really give you anything. If you say thank you, now you owe them something for whatever you thanked them for. Okay? So don't say that. Instead, I like to say, I appreciate what you did. I have nothing to give in return, but I appreciate what you did. Be very clear. It literally is just that. Just be very clear, very honest. And you'll be fine. Don't make promises you can't keep either, though. So be very clear, be extremely honest. Don't keep promises you can't keep. Or don't make promises you can't keep. Those 3 things. Protections against the Fae. I mentioned iron. Iron is not consistently seen as a protection against the Fae. Sometimes it just pisses them off in history, but in general, you can protect yourself against the Fae for the most part, just like any other bad entity, right? You, depending on your culture or whatever, maybe you sage the area, maybe you smudge, maybe you smoke cleanse, maybe you sound cleanse, maybe you create wards, maybe you, just do what you would usually do. The intention is seen and it's heard. Okay, so don't think that this is some brand new thing that you got to worry about protecting yourself from. It's fine. The intention is seen and heard, and that's usually enough. If you do have a trickster Fae, though, that's going to be another video. But if you do have a trickster Fae who just will not leave you the fuck alone, you're going to have to. There's a lot, and I might actually make a different video about that. But yeah. Anyway, that's a different video. I don't have time for that. Offerings, they can be tangible. They can be devotional acts of service to nature. They can be whatever, but they need to be consistent. And like I mentioned earlier, it needs to always be, you need to be honest. You need to be true to what you're doing. You just need to be genuine, okay? Consistent and genuine. And you should be fine. All right, I feel like a lot of times we paint Fae as these big scary things to not work with. It's a lot. Trust me, it's okay. just know that they can be little shit sometimes, but just go in just go in with confidence. That's all I can say. Go in with confidence, and don't show that you're scared. Like I mentioned before, alcohol, bud, if you're of age, that makes other really good offerings as well. They like to have a good time, okay? They love to have a good time. Folklorically, look up Pan. Look up him. It's not necessarily a god, I would say a godling, but yeah, the Greek god Pan, he's pretty cool. He's been known to chill with some Fae, specifically nymphs. Yeah, so they like music. They like to mess around. They like drinking. They like having a good time. So those are good offerings. Like I said, acts of service to nature, but on the note of them liking to have a party, I mean, shit, you could even throw them a party. That would be fun. Yes, depending on the situation, I did mention blood and written contracts. Those are a lot more heavier situations that you would need to do something like that. But, just in general, just be very careful who you're writing a contract with. Make sure you can keep your promise. And if you're going to offer blood, be very safe about it. Don't hurt yourself. And frankly, honestly, I probably shouldn't even put it in this video that you could do that. I did not tell you to do that. It's just something I do. Okay? Okay. Any hoozle. Yeah, consistency is key. Go check out the books I mentioned. I think that is gonna cover it. Yes. So, again, super sorry about my shitty camera quality. Hopefully you can get over that. Hopefully you enjoyed this. You learned something. Yes, so Thursday again, I'm going to be doing a book review on New World Witchery by Corey Hutchison and comparing it to his newest book that he just came out with. That's just going to be for Thursday. Next week, I have not decided yet. So, but if you would like to support me and you would like to see more of this, go ahead and like this video, go ahead and subscribe, and keep your eyes peeled for more content. So, I love y'all, and I will see you guys soon. Please be safe out there. Remember to drink all your water, take your meds, take care of yourself. I'll see you guys soon. All right, bye.